And since you have to be crazy to be a sociology major, I got a job in the mental health field. And a friend of mine was working at a community group home where there were adults with developmental disabilities and special needs. And I had been working in a warehouse after college and was thinking, wouldn't it be neat to get a job that you have to have a degree for? So I got a hold of their HR and I got a job as an assistant supervisor at a community group home. Where I had never previously really set foot, apart from interviewing. Now, when I walked into the place, I was scared because there were people who I didn't know who were just a little bit different than me. And one guy was really kind of mad at something that I really didn't understand. And one of the staff who was there just kind of like turned him into the back room and he sort of disappeared. And that was that much of a concern. I'm like, hi, I'm looking for the supervisor, right, and the new assistant. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, just step on over to the office. He'll be with you in a minute. And as I'm walking over to the office, somebody kind of like gallops past me and almost knocks me down and is like just jumping around like his feet are on fire. And I'm like, I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what was going on. But there was one of our dedicated group home staff sitting on the sofa reading a novel, doesn't look up and says, oh, that's just Eddie, don't worry, it's just his demon. Now, usually I think I'm going into a community group home where, where treatment is more science-based than, say, something more demonology-y. So I kind of dismissed that, especially when I looked down the line, I kind of opened up his files. I found out that his family was not from what you would call the deep end of the gene pool, and that as a child he had ingested lead paint chips. So he had some serious neurological deficiencies. Now, also, I guess at a very young age, he was in a very bad car accident where he was thrown clear of the car. His parents were very seriously injured, and while he was bloodied and bruised, kind of coming out of the car, coming out of the car's impact, he was attacked by a wild dog. So he had those things going for him, and he very frequently had hallucinations about being attacked by a dog. So science can answer these questions. Now, I'm not all science. I was church involved for many years and was working at, a few years down the pike for the same company, working at the day program, where I had to stay quite a bit later into the afternoon while somebody's ride was coming to pick him up. The person who I was staying with was a very seriously, what's the right way to put this? He had very serious mental health issues as well as a very low IQ. And he was one of the very few people that I think I knew over the years who was they really kind of had a hard time finding the right medication and the right intensity of the medication for him. He would be someone who would be sitting in a chair and all of a sudden, like against a brick wall, and would all of a sudden just kind of be like somebody slapped him in the back of the head or something like that. He just didn't know what he was going to do, and every now and then he would react to something in the room that he saw, and he would twist up his hands, and his knuckles were about twice the size of mine from the abuse that he inflicted on himself. So there we were in the quiet at the end of the day. Almost nobody else was in the building, and I'm in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and it was a very lonely phase of my life. And as I was a church-involved person, I started praying. I prayed silently. I'm pretty well in control of when my mouth moves and when it doesn't. I prayed silently. I'm like, God, I want, something that I want in life is a girlfriend and a wife. Can you help me out here? Why can't I find someone? Why am I so lonely? And then this fellow with all those hallucinations and things like that, he had been asleep on a table. Amid his mental health issues, and his heavy medication regimen, he looks up at me and says, "It's because you're selfish," and he puts his head back. And honestly, the hairs are standing up on my neck all these years later, because it was just such a shock to hear this. You know, like, I wasn't talking to him. He's got stuff in his life and his makeup, and he's heavily medicated and kind of asleep. So I went to try to find one of my coworkers to be like, who's kind of like into that kind of the metaphysical kind of scene, and I'm like, I got, you know, she was on the phone. She's like, I'm like, you know, you don't talk to you know, and she was on the phone. I couldn't find anybody else that I wanted to talk to. I'm like, okay, there are pastors out there. Pastors, you know, deal with this kind of stuff. And I called a friend who was the pastor at at sort of a charismatic church that I had some involvement with, and he's like, you know, that's interesting. He's like, I would think that if it was something from God, that it would be something more encouraging. You know, it's something more hopeful and helpful. And I'm just going, you know, so I just kind of decompressed with him for a little bit, and he prayed for me, and we just kind of moved on. And I'm just kind of like, I was not over this yet, because this guy who was asleep just kind of like gave what was like a credible response to my prayer. And I called my old family church, was right across the street from where I worked, and I called the pastor there, who I knew real well, and he's like, let's just pray for peace for you right now, you know? And I'm like thinking, okay, he's thinking, I'm crazy, okay? So yeah, I took a little time to talk to him, and then I was kind of done, but I was totally not satisfied. So remember how I was talking about science? As it turned out, this fellow had one of his features was he had what you call mantras. There were little snippets of conversations that he had at some point in his life, whether he picked it up from a movie or from or if somebody had said it to him. He would every now and then just kind of come out with, "You're selfish." And over the years, as I've told this story, people say, you called out to the great beyond, and you got an answer. You need to honor that. Other people say, oh yeah, I've heard of mantras. Yeah, that's totally exactly what that is. Don't worry about it. So I'm kind of leaning more towards the latter, because this is my wife, Sarah, and she says I'm not selfish.
You're not selfish.
Thank you very much.
Get yourself a waiter.